How's it going, guys? My name's, for those of you who don't know, I'm Zesty from Revolution.gg. I'm a Masters 1 player, pretty top ranked at the moment. Um, all right. So what I wanted to do with this series, as you all know, this is StarCraft by the numbers. I wanted to this first episode, go into sort of some of my motivations for doing this series and explain a little bit more about how I think this series can benefit both new and experienced players in StarCraft who feel like they're stagnating and not quite able to improve. In the past few months, I've noticed a growing number of new player posts, on Reddit and other forums such as BattleNet forums. And even more recently than that, we had the WCS, which brought in viewership from, 20,000, 30,000 people, almost unheard of numbers for StarCraft 2 for a very long time since, 2011, 2012, if it was even that high then. Um, so with this bump in viewership and this amount of new players that we got, I wanted to do this series because I feel that as a community, the way that we approach uh, learning and improving and teaching new players, fundamentally, it's a little bit wrong. It's a little bit off. Let me paint a picture for you all, and let me know if this is familiar to you. You're browsing the forums, hanging out in general chat, chilling on Discord with, your clan, and someone will come from the net and they'll say, "Hey, I just want to know. I'm a new player. I just want to know how can I improve?" Or even not, I'm a new player. I'm a bronze player. I'm a platinum player. How can I improve? And inevitably, someone's going to jump up and say, "Hey, you know what you need to do, bro? You need a macro. You need a macro better, right?" This irks me for two reasons. The first of which is it's a really, really lazy response, which produces really, really lazy results. Um, the second is what we mean when we say macro, and what like really people are telling you to do is they're telling you to work on your raw mechanical skill and your ability to spend your money, right? But what macro actually is encompasses so much more than just raw mechanical skill. It's also about being able to process the information in the game, make fundamental understanding of how the economy works, where you want to spend your money, when you want to spend your money on workers, on units, on gas, how this affects you in the game, and how your opponent is being affected by the decisions that they're making. So fundamentally, macro encompasses so much more than what the community at large is sort of using it to mean. Um, it really, at the end of the day, macro is understanding, is making choices and understanding how these choices present different options to each players, and how they limit each players, and basically what the status quo of the game is at that time. Okay, so that being said, I want to like a lot of you might say, okay, that's a lot for a new player to take in. There's a lot of numbers involved, and really, what I want to point out here, I often get pushed back. Like the hardest thing about StarCraft is the mechanical skill. Therefore, what needs to happen is new players need to work on building that mechanical skill as the first thing before they worry about scouting, decision making, unit composition, things like that. So, in response to that, I'm going to offer the following analogy. Okay, consider an apprentice handyman with a tool belt. Part of his job is to select the right tool for the right job. And part of his job is also to be able to physically use that tool to do that job. When he's learning this new trade, the handyman's not just taught how to use that tool, how to use the hammer to the best of his ability, right? He's because we've all heard the old adage, when you have a hammer, everything is a nail. Everything looks like a nail, right? But if the handyman were to think that that's the case, he'd be using a hammer to try to, nail in a screw. Would not work out so well. He might actually even get to the point where he can even force the screw to go in the wall with the hammer, but it's not necessarily good, and at the end of the day, it's not very good craftsmanship. Really, what happens is the handyman is taught concurrently. This is a type of job that that you're doing. You need to select this tool, and he's also learning how to use that tool for that job. These things are happening hand in hand. And if anything, he can't even learn how to use physically the tool until he knows what that tool applies to. So it sort of seems like in StarCraft terms, let's talk about it. You need to know where you need to correct, or sorry, excuse me. You need to correctly understand the in-game status quo at any given point to even begin to know what mechanical actions you need to perform and prioritize and learn. All right. So all that being said, in this series, let's talk about what we're going to talk about in this series more in depth. In this series, we're going to be using. In this series, I want to make it very clear. We're not going to be. We're going to be talking about specific strategies and the current meta, but we're not going to be talking about them and focusing on them. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to use these simple strategies, these specific strategies and current metas, to convey the underlying principles and the numbers that govern StarCraft. It's important to note that understanding these numbers not only helps professional level play, but also bronze, masters, and everything in between. So don't think for a second like, oh my gosh, Zesty. What you're telling me right now is very in depth. It's a lot of numbers, but it doesn't apply to me here in Bronze League. The point is these numbers apply to everyone, no matter what league you're in. All right, so all that being said, this series is not intended to be a 12 quick tips to get your game on track or how to go from bronze to master in just 30 days. This is a series that will focus on building numerical understandings of the values that govern StarCraft, and therefore being able to focus your practice, focus your mechanical practice, and your decision-making practice so that you gain results faster, but you're still going to have to put the time in on your end. It's still going to take. This is a series that's trying to teach you how to learn, not teach you specific strategies. So if that's something that you're not interested in, I mean, I bear you no ill will, but right now is where you should probably part ways. It will take work, and it's not going to be just an easy quick fix. All right. Without further ado, I don't know, that was a big mouthful and that was a high soapbox for me to be on, but let's go ahead and go into the first episode. So, as you see, the first episode is called StarCraft by the numbers. Hey Zesty, numbers are cool, but I feel ... So, what is that title supposed to mean? What we're going to be looking at in this first lesson is basically how to show that StarCraft is indeed a game ruled by numbers, and that a solid understanding of these numbers can help us predict what is possible without even having to be inside of a game. So that being said, hold on, and I just realized I had this up the entire time. How silly of me. Let's get rid of that now. Even though we're inside the game, we're not even going to look at this game yet. We're going to start by looking at Notepad. And what we're going to try to do, just as I want to emphasize that what we're about to demonstrate is not something, it's simply a demonstration to prove a point about how numbers really do control everything that you can do in StarCraft. You should not try this at home unless you're a certified mathematician, all right, kids? That's all. Or, I tried this, my brain almost exploded, but I came out and I was okay. But seriously, like the stuff we're about to do right now, it's very in depth, it's very dense, it's very strong on the math. And don't be scared by this. This is not something that we're going to be going in and doing this sort of math this explicitly. But I do want to show you guys how math really does affect StarCraft. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to see what is the fastest, safest way that a Protoss can get to one Oracle in the PVZ on two bases. So what's the fastest, safest way a Protoss can get to an Oracle on two bases? Okay, so how are we going to do that? The first thing that we have to do is we have to get a fundamental understanding of some numbers. So let's start with that. Define some numbers. So these are our number definitions. The first thing we want to look at is probes. Probes mine roughly 5 minerals every time they go back, right? Additionally, it takes about 5 seconds for a probe to go back with its load. So 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds, probes mine 5 minerals. So from there, ergo, we can derive that probes roughly mine 5 minerals every 5 seconds, which is basically 1 mineral per second. Okay? Everyone keeping up so far? Great. The next thing that we want to learn, or we want to think about, is how much gas do we get. So over 1 minute, we get about 164 gas from a geyser. So per geyser, and this is assuming that the geyser is fully saturated. So that being said, how long does it take if we know that there's 60 seconds in a minute? Then we can do the simple thing here where we go 164 divided by 60 should give us the number of gas that we mine per second roughly, and that's going to be about 2.7. So 2.7 gas per geyser per second. Okay, everyone keeping up so far? All right, let's throw out some more numbers here too. Let's talk about unit build times. So units slash buildings build times. First thing we have is we have a probe. A probe, it takes about 12 seconds to build. Now we know that Protoss, their new chrono boost means that all the units are going to build 15% faster. So really, we're going to take 12 seconds. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Got to be careful about that. We're going to take 12 seconds. We're going to times that by 0.85. So 85% should be 15% faster. So it really takes about 10.2 seconds if we're chrono boosting probes the entire time. So, or if we're chrono boosting a probe, it'll take 10 seconds. Additionally, a probe is also going to take 50 minerals, right? Pylons. Pylons are going to take 17 seconds, and they're going to cost 100 minerals. Nexus. A Nexus is going to cost 71 seconds, or take 71 seconds to complete. It's going to cost 400 minerals. And we're just going to go through the rest of these, we will talk about it when I get done. Gateway. It's going to go ahead and be 46 seconds at 150 minerals. I gotta stop using this number pad. It's screwing up all my macros. Cybercore is going to be 36 seconds, and it's going to be 150 minerals. Adept is going to be 27 seconds, and let's go ahead and do the math on this. 27 times 0.85 is 22.9, so basically 23 seconds if he's been chrono boosted. All right, it's going to be 100 minerals and 50 gas, right? Warp gate. So we're going to say WPGT. That's warp gate. Maybe we should say WG. Yeah, we're going to do it this way. This is 112 seconds. And if we go ahead and do the math on that, I have it written down here somewhere. It's actually going to be 9.5 seconds. Ah! I gotta stop using this. I never knew how much I relied on my numpad before, just right now. This will take 50 minerals and 50 gas. Okay, lastly, what's the last thing that we're gonna need to build a safe Stargate build? We need a Stargate, which will be 43 seconds, 150 minerals, and 150 gas. As well as an Oracle, we'll go and throw that on there as well, just so we can see how fast the fastest Oracle could be out. And that is 36 seconds. Which, if we go ahead into our handy dandy calculator and say 36 divided by, times 0.85, it'll really take about 30 seconds, 30.6 seconds to complete. And that's going to be some amount of minerals and about 150 gas. The minerals are pretty irrelevant at this point. All right. So for those of us just joining, what we're doing is we are go ahead and we're going to prove how you can learn how much numbers govern StarCraft. What we're going to try to do is we're going to try to predict what is the fastest warp gate that we can, or the fastest Stargate that we can get on two bases versus Zerg that's safe, and we're going to try to do it without ever opening up a game. And then when we're done, what we're going to do is we're going to match up our predictions with a real actual game. So the first thing that we have to know is how much minerals we have in the first minute of a StarCraft game. So we start off with 12 workers, and remember these 12 workers are mining at 1 mineral per second, so it's 12 times 1. 12 times 1 times 60 seconds in 1 minute is going to be, this is the first minute by the way, is going to be about 420. This is killing me. This is killing me. I've really got to stop using that. The second minute, or excuse me, we don't actually have, let's think about a little bit more how the mineral line works. We only have one nexus in the first minute, correct? Which means we can only optimally mine 16 mineral patches, 16 drones on 8 mineral patches. So that means that the optimum amount of mineral saturation we can get per minute is going to be, and excuse me, this is actually wrong. The optimum amount we're going to get is 16 on the first minute. It takes 71 seconds to build a nexus, so we can in no way have, of course, a second mineral patch. So at some point, we're going to be going up to 16 minerals, or 16 drones or probes on one patch. Now, we're going to go ahead and average the result of these together to essentially give us the equivalency of what we actually think we've mined in that time. The other thing that we have to think about is we're constantly producing probes. Probes cost 50 minerals, right? And as we saw up here, they take 10 seconds to build. So basically what we know is that every 10 seconds we need to devote 50 minerals to building a probe, assuming that we did our mineral balancing correctly. What's an easy way to do that? To say every 10 seconds we need to develop 50. That basically means every second we need to devote 5 minerals to a new probe. Now, what mines minerals 5 or basically how could we go ahead and get 5 minerals per second? If we know that each probe mines a mineral per second, we have 12 probes. We could actually say the number of probes we have, which is 12, minus 5, because each one is mining 5 per second, we'll go ahead and automatically account for the 50 minerals that we need every 10 seconds to build a new probe. So every time we do our calculations, we're actually going to subtract 5 probes from that calculation. All right. So that being said, this really becomes 7 times 1, which doesn't matter, times 60 seconds. So that'll be roughly 420 minerals. And let me be very careful not to use my number pad. And this right here becomes 11 times 1 times 60, which is 660. Now what we do is we average these together. So this is going to be 660 plus 420 divided by 2. And that's going to equal 540. So we're going to say in the first minute, we've mined roughly 540 minerals. Don't worry if you're late. You can always watch the VOD later. This says miniature. But since you're just coming in, let me just go and tell you what we're doing, so you're not completely blown away by the math. We are literally just trying to predict, without ever going into a game, what's the fastest, safest way. The fastest safe build a Protoss can do to get an Oracle out, to figure out what the standard time an Oracle could be out is. All right, so in the first minute, we've discovered that we can have 540 minerals. In the second minute, let's think about this for a second. We only mined 540, so at best, we could start, and that's assuming we also have to devote 50 minerals to a pylon, right? or 100 minerals to a pylon. So we really could have only started the Nexus at the very end of this last minute. So basically, and since Nexuses take 71 seconds to make, which is more than a minute, it's slightly more than a minute, all through the second minute, we're only going to have access to 8 mineral patches, therefore a maximum of 16 optimally mining drones. So we're once again going to say for the second minute, the entire time, we're going to have 16 drones minus 5, because remember, we're still constantly making probes. Drones, probes, I'm going to be using these interchangeably, guys. Sorry about that. And so we're still going to have 600. So for the minute of 2, we're going to mine 660 minerals. In the third minute, once again, we're going to our Nexus is going to go ahead and finish. Now we're assuming the gateway first, which is something that can be easily scouted. And with a gateway first, we know that we can only make up to how much. So the gateway will finish. Well, hold on. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So let's go ahead and try to map out these first two minutes before we get to the third minute. So in the first minute, what's going to happen? We know we're making probes constantly, and if we're making probes constantly, we need a pylon almost immediately, right? So the first pylon is going to be at what point? When do we have 100 minerals? So the way we can figure that out is we say 100 divided by 12, because that's how many probes we have mining, but it's not really 12. It's actually going to be 7, because remember, we're devoting 5 minerals every second to making a new probe. So around 14.2, around 14.2 seconds, we're going to go ahead and have enough money to make a pylon. Now, also consider that we're probably going to make the pylon slightly farther away, so we're going to add a couple seconds. We're going to say like 16, 17 seconds, because we're going to lose a little bit of mining time whenever the probe has to go build the pylon in the first place. So we'll say 16 seconds, we'll have enough money for our first pylon. This pylon costs 100 minerals. Okay. Now, what's the next thing we're building? Remember we said we're going gateway first? So the next thing we're building is a gateway, which costs 150. Now, at 16 seconds, we should have gone right down from 100 minerals to 0 minerals. So we got to figure out how long it's going to take to mine 150 minerals. Does anyone in the chat want to go ahead and throw out a suggestion about how we can do that? Using the same method we just did. We're going to once again divide it by 12. And so basically, it'll take us 12.5. We can round up to 13 seconds. It'll take roughly 13 seconds to mine the 150 minerals we need to, that would be the case if we weren't constantly making probes. Since we are constantly making probes, we're actually going to say it's still 7. So it'll take roughly 21.4. So we'll say at this point 21 seconds to make the gateway. So 21 is going to be 16 plus 21 will be 37, 38, depending on exactly how the math rounds out. So we'll say 38, and that's when the gateway will drop. The gateway is 150 minerals as well. Now, in this first minute, remember, we're mining 420. So if we look at 420 minus what we have so far, which is 250, we don't really have enough to make a Nexus at all, but we do have kind of a lot of money that we want to be spending. So instead of a Nexus, let's make an assimilator. So how fast from 38 seconds can we drop an assimilator? Assimilator is 75 minerals, and it takes 23 seconds. Actually, I didn't put that on there, but assimilator is 75 minerals. So it'll take 75 minus, at this point, we've probably got 16 workers, which will take us to 11. So at this point, it'll be about 7 seconds till we can make the assimilator. So it'll be about 45, 46 seconds, and we can drop the assimilator. We'll just say assim so we have enough room. So in this first minute, how many minerals have we spent? We've been spending constantly on probes, and besides probes, we have 420 extra left over. So in this first minute, we've spent a total of 250, 325 minerals spent, left over, or we can call it bank. We should have 420 minus 325. That's 95 minerals. So we'll have, roughly speaking, 95 minerals. However, since we went at what we didn't account for here is we did not account for the scouting probes. And so if we send the scouting probes out, the first probe finishes about 10, 12 seconds, and it goes and builds the pylon and scouts. So it's not mining the rest of the time. So all the time, 60 minus 12, the first moment when it could have started mining and didn't, will actually be subtracted from our total. So we're going to subtract at 60 minus 12 is 48, as well as the one that the probe that went and built the gateway and came back to mine. That's also going to be subtracted. So the gateway was at 38. Let's assume 5 seconds it took him to travel to go to the gateway place, and then about, if he also had to make the assimilator at 46. So assume he went back to mine around 48. So 48 minus 38 is a solid 20. So really the bank is going to be closer to 95 minus 68. And so it'll actually be closer to 2750, somewhere around there. So the bank, this is our bank, is this many minerals at the end. All right. And let's move on to minute 2. So in minute 2, what's the next time? The next thing we want to make is we want to make our nexus, right? So speaking, I think I did this math wrong. 250, sorry, that's right. 325. Oh. Ha. Okay, this is why I did the math wrong. Glad I caught myself. So it's actually going to be 420 plus 660, which is 540. So instead of only having 95 left over, we're actually going to have 540 minus 325 left over, which is roughly 215, not 95. So instead of only having 27 minerals left over, we're really going to have 215 minus 68. We'll have closer to like 147 minerals left over at the end of minute 1. All right, so now we're into minute 2. The next thing we want to drop is our nexus. Considering that we have 147 minerals in the bank and it takes 400 minerals to drop a nexus, what we need to get to between the 2-minute mark and when we can drop it is 253 minerals. So 253 minerals divided by, now we have 16 drones operating mining, but we can only count 11 of them because we're constantly making probes. So it's 253 divided by 11 probes mining at a mineral per second will be 23 seconds, roughly speaking. So really, we can drop this nexus at 123. This nexus takes 400 minerals. And remember, this nexus completes at 71 seconds. So let's make a little note right here, too, that this nexus will complete, roughly speaking, at 223 plus 11 seconds. So 234 is, roughly speaking, when this nexus is going to complete. What does this already tell us about the game? If we show up and it's at 2 minutes, 2:08 is when our overload gets there, which is, by the way, a lot of times when your overload does get there, and you see the nexus at still about, in the yellow, not quite close to being done yet, you know that for a fact he went for a gateway and then a nexus. Or he at least delayed his nexus so late that he could have gotten a gateway first. But you also know that he can only have that gateway and maybe an assimilator back home and the one pylon and the nexus, and he didn't have any money for anything else. Except, of course, when you get there at 2 minutes, he'll have what else we can figure out in this 2 minutes. So what else can you throw down? The next thing we need is we need a cyber core. So again, we should have gone down to 0 minerals in the bank. So our cyber core is going to be at 150 here. So 150 minerals, it'll take us roughly 13.6 seconds. So let's round that up to 14. We should be able to drop our cyber core somewhere around 137, if I did my math correctly, which I think I did. So cyber core will be dropped right here, which is 150 minerals. Let's make a note that the cyber core, remember, takes 36 seconds to finish, as we see up here. So that will be done, roughly speaking, at 2:03. Now, what else do we need to see at this point? We're going to need to see a second assimilator, right? Because at only 164 per minute, and we didn't even quite rally all the way in. In fact, just to simplify the math a little bit, I'm going to tell you at the gas bank at the end of minute 1 is roughly speaking going to be 72. So 72 gas at the end of minute 1. The reason that I'm going to go ahead and just tell you this instead of going in and do the math with it is because the way Protoss does it is they rally into gas instead of immediately putting 3 on gas, which makes it a little bit hard to to average out what we're going to get, and it'll go way too in depth for what we're doing right now. So 72 gas, but then at this point, for the rest of this whole minute, we know that we're going to be mining how much gas? At this point, we know we're going to be mining. So here's our bank, right? We're not sure. We're not exactly sure. We're not at the minute in minerals yet. But considering that we haven't spent any, considering that the cyber core won't be done until 2:03, we know that we won't be spending any more gas this minute. So in the whole minute, we're going to be mining 164 gas. Added that on to the 72 gas already in our bank, and that'll leave us with 164 plus 72, 236 gas in the bank. Okay. What does this mean? This means as soon as our cyber core is done, we can afford basically anything. We can afford an adept. We can afford warp gate, and then as soon as we feel that it's necessary, we can probably afford a mothership core too as well, or a tech choice, right? But remember now, this is going to be at minute 3, okay? Sorry, at the end of minute 2. Let me rephrase this. This will be done, yeah, 2:32. Okay, moving on. We want another assimilator, and we want another pylon. So let's say the assimilator next. The assimilator takes 75 minerals to make, divided by our 11 probes still. So that's going to be roughly 7 seconds later. So that'll be like 144 we're going to see an assimilator go down. And then the pylon is going to take an additional 100. I'm killing myself here with these. 100 divided by 11. So it'll be another 9 seconds after that, which would be 153. Roughly speaking, we'll have another pylon down, which is 100 minerals. Now, let's look at our bank at this point. How much money have we accounted for? We started off with 147 minerals in the bank, and this entire minute we've mined, if we go back to our handy little chart, 660. So 660 plus 147, this entire minute we've had 807 minerals to work with. We spent 400, so minus that right off the top. Now we're down to 407. We spent 150. 150, come on, baby. There we go. 150, and we spent 75, and then we spent 100. So roughly speaking, we should be about 82 minerals in the bank at this point. Okay, still pretty reasonable, right? 82 minerals in the bank. All right, awesome. Now, remember at 2:03, our cyber core finishes. And remember, we're not just trying to find the fastest we could possibly do a Stargate. What we're instead trying to find is the fastest with still being relatively safe. So we're going to start warp gate, and we're going to start an adept immediately at 2:03. So or 2:04-ish. We had 82 minerals in the bank. In 4 seconds, how many minerals will we have gained? So 4 times 11. we will have gained 44 minerals, so that'll be total 120. So then, like with another second, like I mean, give or take a couple seconds, we'll have 150, which is what we need. So maybe like 5 seconds times 11. Wait, what did I just say? 5 seconds. Yeah, I'm not sure what I just did. 82 minerals in the bank. We need 150. So minus 82. This is getting crazy. We need 150 minerals to start an adept and warp gate, correct? And we're going to go ahead and minus 82 from that because we already know we have 82. So divide that by, we'll say 11. It'll take roughly 6 seconds. So by 206 for sure, we'll have enough money to start both an adept and warp gate. So looking at this, we can say we need an adept and we need a warp gate. WPGT is what we're calling that. And assuming that we chrono the adept and not the warp gate's 112 seconds, so this will be done sometime way in the future. You know, we're talking almost 4 minutes. And this adept, if we chrono it, remember it takes 27 seconds. If we chrono it, it'll be 23. So this adept will be ready to be coming out and chomping in our face around 229. Okay, the adept takes 100 minerals. The warp gate takes 100 minerals, or 50 minerals. The adept takes 25 gas, and this takes 50 gas. All right, what's our gas bank going to look like at this point? Considering that we've been mining, we've been really concerned with minerals up until this point. However, at this point, we also know that our minerals are pretty good. We're getting a good mineral income right now. Gas is our limiting factor. We've taken right here. We took an extra gateway, or an extra. We took an extra assimilator. So for this entire minute, we've been mining from one assimilator, and we have a second assimilator. So first of all, 2.7 times 60 will give us how much gas we've mined from the one assimilator, which is 162-ish, right? Also, we have the 72 gas, which is in the bank. And then this last assimilator, which has been mining for, roughly speaking, assimilators take 21 seconds to create. So we're just going to go ahead and say it's pretty negligible at this point, and it won't start mining until this 2 minutes. So we're going to say that, roughly speaking, in the bank, we have 234 gas to work with. After this transaction right here, so after the 75 gas that we spent right here, of this 234 gas, we only have, so 234 minus 75 gas, we only have like 159 left to work with. All right. All right. So that being the case, when can we have our tech buy? Sorry, the reason I'm pausing right now is because this number isn't quite working out the way I think it should. And so I'm trying to go back through my math and figure out where I screwed up. You won't have 17. Okay, here's where I screwed up. you won't have 72 gas at the end of this first minute. You have 72 gas here instead, out of that first pylon. Out of 46 seconds, even if we got it at, so let's see, if we had it for 14 seconds times 3, we'd have 42. Sorry, that's where I actually screwed up. Is you'll have 42, but it's actually going to be slightly less than 42. It's going to be because you didn't have it 3 in the entire time. So if we only had 1, so 1 times like 2.7, even we'll say. That doesn't make sense. Anyway, it's actually going to be closer to like 42-ish. Even a little bit less, maybe like 35, because we didn't have 3 in this entire minute. So where I screwed up is I decided instead of to calculate the numbers, I just said, oh, this is it. And obviously, as we can tell, that's a terrible, terrible idea. You should never do that. So 162 plus 35 is going to be 197-ish. 197. And so instead of 234, when we're left with when we subtract 75 from that, is we're actually going to be left with closer to like 122. All right. Ah, okay. Now remember that this is all the gas we can have at the end of the minute, but really at this time, we have 35 or 75 gas total. As yeah, I'm screwing this up a lot. This is why. This is 0 minute. This is 1 minute, and this is 2 minutes. So at the beginning of this 2 minutes, because of the way we put on gas, we have 72 gas in the bank. 72 gas in the bank. Let me go ahead and try to explain, because I know that I sort of jumped around there, and I don't want you guys to think I'm fudging the numbers. At the end of 1 minute, the beginning of 2 minutes, because of the way that we were mining gas, we weren't mining at full optimal saturation for this whole minute. Instead, we were rallying in one at a time, so we maintained optimal saturation on the mineral line, right? So that being the case, we'll only have 72 gas at the end of this first minute, beginning of the second minute. So then, in the 6, how long will it take to get to the 75 gas we need? Or in roughly speaking, the 206 in the 6 seconds that we have, how much gas will we have mined? So in 6 seconds, remember we can do 6 times 2.7, but it's actually going to be 5.4 because now we have two assimilators going. And so we're going to mine about 32 gas. So we really have 72 gas plus 32 gas minus the 75 gas. So 32 plus 72 minus 75. So now we only have about 29 gas, 30 gas at this point. So then how quickly can we drop tech is the question, considering that gas is a limiting factor. That was pretty awful. Does everyone in chat understand this? Because I understand that I sort of just looked like I fudged the numbers with the gas there quite a bit. So everyone's still tracking? I'm going to wait a couple minutes or a couple seconds to make sure everyone is tracking. Okay, no response, so I'm going to assume that everyone's tracking, and that's fine. Okay, so we have about 30 gas here. So the question is, if we're dropping tech, how quickly can we drop it? If we're dropping something like a Mothership Core, a Twilight Council, a Mothership Core isn't technically tech, but it does cost gas. something that costs 100 gas, a robo, how quickly can we have 100 gas? So we'll have 100 minus 30. 70 gas is what we need to gain, divided by the 5.4 gas we're getting per second. It'll be about 12 seconds from this 1206. Really 13 seconds. So that'll be like 12:19 absolute earliest, considering we played everything super standard super well. What about if we wanted to get Stargate, which is what we're looking at? That's 150 gas minus the 30 gas that we have in the bank, which is 120. So now we do that. How long will it take? It'll take 22, 23 seconds, right? So 2 minutes plus 23 seconds, or 23 seconds is going to be roughly, this will again be like 2:29. So it's not 2:39, 2:29 would be like the absolute earliest we could drop our warp gate. And this is assuming a lot of things went 100% perfectly. So really the tolerance for this is going to be, plus or minus 5 seconds. Plus or minus, I wouldn't even say 5, plus or minus like 3 seconds. So if we saw this somewhere between 2:29 to like 2:32-ish seconds, we would think that that was pretty much right on where we thought. Okay, this is 150 minerals and 150 gas. Okay. Now let's go ahead and take a little breather and talk about how many minerals we have in the bank. So by 2:32. By the way, the Stargate should also finish at what time? It takes 43 seconds. So it'll finish around the 3:10 mark-ish. And then at the 3:10 mark, if we went down to 0 gas, how much gas will we have? How much gas will we have mined? So 3:10 this is 40 seconds total. So over 40 seconds times 5.4, we can have mined about 216 gas. Right. So basically, we'll have just enough gas to have if we want a mothership core in there, then we won't. That'll be another 100 gas we need. And if we're making a Phoenix, we're good. We can start the Phoenix immediately. If we're making an Oracle, we're actually going to be about 40 gas shy. So it'll be our Stargate will sit there idle for possibly 40 divided by 5.4. It'll sit there idle for 1 or 2 seconds. So if we get an Adept, a Warp Gate, and a Mothership Core, roughly speaking, around 3:17-ish is when our Oracle will start. Okay. So we did a lot of math. We did a lot of crazy theories here, but let's see if it actually checks out. Let's see if it actually works. This here is StarCraft, while you all tuned in. So right here I have a replay from that Zest played when he was practicing on the ladder for his WCS. No relation to me, by the way. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and compare Zest's timings up with what we think, roughly speaking, he should be able to do. So in this first 16 seconds, we see that he didn't actually start his probe quite on time, so it's actually going to finish around 11 seconds. Goes immediately and it starts to build a probe. We think about 16 seconds he could build it. It was about 17 seconds. Pretty much on time. The next hard time we're looking for the gateway to be dropped around 38 seconds. Right there at 39 seconds it gets dropped. So we're about 1 second fast, but remember we're dealing with human elements here as well. We missed the dropping of the assimilator, but if we can see it was dropped 10 seconds ago, so about 49 seconds, 46 seconds. We're getting a little bit off, but it's still, I think, within tolerance. Now, one thing that, thanks for the follow, by the way. Now, one thing that I really want to go ahead and emphasize here is that look at all the, well, so far we've been pretty much correct in all the times that he can do everything. And look at how much he has in the bank. He has 147 minerals at the end of minute 1. In reality, he really only has 115, even less than he possibly could have if he's playing everything perfectly great. So at this point, has he had any room to deviate? If we walked up to his base right now, saw a pylon and saw a gateway, could he possibly be doing anything else? The answer is no. There's no way, seeing this information, if we like drone scouted, he could be doing anything else. So let's move on. What's the next hard time? About 123 for a Nexus. So we'll just go ahead and see. And here's the probe. It's coming out. When's the Nexus gonna drop? When's the Nexus gonna drop? When's the Nexus gonna... 123. And we're back down to essentially 0 minerals. So at 123, the Nexus drops. The next thing we're going to be looking for is about 137, a Cyber Core. $135, 36, 37. Right on the money. Now, notice our Overlord, he's getting pretty close. He's not quite there yet, but he's getting pretty close. When he comes up to sea at about 208, he comes and he sees this setup right here. So this Cyber Core finishing right at, and actually we did our math wrong. This takes 36 seconds, and it turns out that 137 plus 137 plus 36 is not 206. It's actually like 212. My bad on that, guys. When he comes up here about 210 and sees this Cybernex core just finishing, he basically can say to himself, this Cybernex core is late if he doesn't have either more gateways or a Nexus. And if I do see more gateways or a Nexus right here, that's all the money he can possibly have spent at this point. And as we do see the Nexus, at this point in the game, we see something chrono boosting out of this gateway. We see the Cyber Cores researching. We know that the only possible thing he can have, money-wise, is maybe 2 more pylons, right? Because this just finished. So he has 1 pylon, and look, he has the money for another pylon. This is what he'd be using to, like, pylon drop us, or drop a sneaky pylon for tech. But he doesn't actually need that right now. So right now we know that we see basically everything that he has, and he could have the intention to set up something later. So that's just an important point I wanted to make. There's no free money anywhere, mathematically, for him to be doing anything else. Okay, so now what we want to look at is our final timings. When is this Stargate going to drop? We're going to want to look somewhere between the 229, 232 timings. And actually, let's go ahead and go here and say at 72 seconds, we have to redo this timings a little bit. Let's go ahead and tighten this shot group to make sure that we get everything completely good. So at 212, we want to know how long. At 212, we're down to 0 gas, or 30 gas, right? So it's going to be 150 minus 30 is 120 divided by 5.4. So we need at 22 seconds from 212. So it's actually going to be closer to 34 seconds. We're going to say 234 is our kind of optimal time that Stargate is going to hit, right? So let's see how close we are. 234 is what we're looking for. 235, 236, 237, 238, 234. And let's let it finish with 234 being the start time. 234 is actually going to go to plus 43 is going to be 317, right? So we're looking for 317 for an oracle to start, or an oracle to be about to start. And I just sped right past it because I'm going at times 8 speed. Someone ought to stop me. So this finishes around 316. We don't have the gas weight yet because we started a mothership core. Remember, we had this mothership core going. And at 318, this starts. 317, 318, I think that's pretty fast. Now, we can also look to see the question that a lot of you are asking. So this demonstration is pretty much over. It's for 2 purposes that we did this. One, I wanted to just show A little bit of bumps and bruises creates, but basically we can map out a StarCraft game by the numbers, just on Notepad, right? So that being the case, we can know when we look at things like this that this is all that he has, right? Or what we're looking at is not enough. He needs more. Now you don't have to go and do this all by feel. You can go and watch replays and be like, this is look, Zest is spending all his money. This is all he can afford at this point. But there's a couple things that you want to be looking at this with a critical eye. For one thing, you want to look at is how long was Zest mining at optimal saturation. With this build, he never went below. Once he went up to 16 on, he basically never went below 16 on workers. And all this gas that he added as soon as he was able to, based on still maintaining the 16 workers on. If he hadn't done that, then look how little minerals he has right now. He would either not be able to afford this oracle because of a mineral standpoint, and he would have way too much gas, or he would have like 6 less workers or so because of how long he had been neglecting his mineral intake. So that's the first thing I want you to look at is that in order to properly balance, we can tell that he spent all his money, and this is the fastest possible that he could put this out. The second thing that I want to point out is that now that we know this timing, 317 in Oracle starts, it takes 36 seconds to finish. And of course, if it's Chrono Boost, which it's always going to be Chrono Boost, right? Almost always. It'll really take 30 seconds. So 30 seconds plus 317 is going to be, what, 347? So at 347, it'll start traveling across the map. And this is a close by air. And I'm going to say it'll take roughly 10 seconds for him to travel across the map. So basically, at 3:57, 4 minutes, we have to worry about on a close by air map the first oracle coming across our map based on scouting the gateway first. So let's just see around 4 minutes. Let's just look over here. 4 minutes. 4:10. It was right here. Did I do that math wrong again? 4:17. No, I did that right. That's good. So it took it a little bit longer than 10 seconds. I would say maybe like 15, 20 seconds. But around 4 minutes, 4:10, we need to be ready for an oracle to come. Why is this important? First of all, let's look at these spore crawlers. They're just now starting at 4:10. Really, they needed to start. If we need to be ready to defend an oracle at 4:10, these spore crawlers needed to start 21 seconds ago, about 3:50. And if we would have done that, then there was no way that this oracle could have got damage done. All right, that was kind of just a fast, loosey-goosey introduction into how numbers really do control StarCraft and the way that the game runs. In the future sessions, it'll be slightly less notepad based, and we'll get into games a little bit more, and we'll kind of we'll still discuss the numbers, but we're going to discuss how when you choose to take gas affects your economy. Are you putting yourself behind because you're taking gas too early? Are you not balancing minerals and resources correctly? Do you have the correct production in order to maintain, a low mineral count and a low gas count? Based on when they're throwing down their production, when can they hit you and how much can they hit you with? And so these will be the topics for future lessons. But I know that I threw a lot at you today, and I don't want to overwhelm you. So what we're going to go ahead and end tonight with just any quick questions you have. I'll answer one or two or three, depending on if there's the interest there. And then we'll go ahead and wrap this up. So let's see. Questions. There we go. Questions. Any questions? Well, if you guys don't have any questions, either I completely sucked, or I did a decent job, I think. I'm not sure which. It's always hard to tell. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end the YouTube section there. What I will do is I'm going to take a short little break, and then I might stream a couple ladder games if y'all want to watch that. So thanks for watching. Look forward to the next one, and I'll see you. I'll put it out on Reddit when I'm going to be doing this again.